Mr. Moore?
Here.
Mrs. Rich?
Here.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Here.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Here.
Mr. Parzak?
Here.
The meeting is now open. Adequate notice of the meeting was provided by posting a copy of the time and place on the municipal clerk's bulletin board and mailing a copy of same to the press and the Cape May County Herald on January 4th, 2019. Will everyone please rise to salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any communications?
Yes, Mayor, we have a letter from John Reddy. Jill, Mayor, and Council, I've been following the Smuggler Cove issue via watching the council meetings online, write-ups in the Herald, networking, and Chapoa's survey. I find it almost unbelievable that the idea of purchasing a current business and its assets, spending capital to improve the assets, and to run it as an ongoing business quite shocking. Although I can see where emotion can run high on preserving some Stone Harbor history, if the fact remains that spending public funds on a business proposition is not in the taxpayer's best interest. If this property was so valuable, then over these past years, why hasn't anybody ever stopped to purchase it? The answer is obvious. It doesn't have a return on the investment. The emotion of the borough owning it is temporary as a service it provides only reaches a small part of the borough residents, and the services can be offered in other ways, like a fuel stop at the marina or Stone Harbor yacht sales or Scotch Bonnet offering the services. A fuel and bait shop can be renamed Smugglers to preserve some of the catch that it has. Taxpayer money is for the good of all the taxpayers and should not be spent foolhardily. The taxpayers get increases every year because of increased costs, and we constantly hear about no reserves for beach and bay, infrastructure, and town planning. I recommend that you think this through again, and when you do, you'll come up with a conclusion that it might be nice to do, but it's a bad idea. The current owners have a problem. Don't let it be ours. Please do not purchase this property. Let a developer improve it and collect the taxes forever.
Any other communications?
No.
I need a motion to receive the communication as read and to make it a part of the record.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? May I have a motion concerning the minutes?
Yes, I move that since all the members of council have been provided with a copy of the minutes of the work session and the meeting of December 18th, 2018, and the organizational meeting of January 2nd, 2019, if there's no additions or corrections, I move that we dispense with the reading of the minutes and that they be approved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll now have public comment. Anyone wishing to address mayor and council may do so at this time by coming forward to the microphone and stating your name and address for the record.
I see a green light on you, so. My name is Mark Asher. I'm an architect, and I do a lot of work in this town, and I'm here to discuss the proposed changes to the zoning code regarding stair encroachments, which last month I was here, and I believe it was voted down. Now I understand that there are new modifications to that before the planning board that will come to this body sometime soon, next month perhaps. But I thought I would just come here and add my 2 cents on this topic. It's a small thing. The zoning code is really a terrific little code. We work in a lot of towns up and down this coast. We see it all, the good and the bad and the ugly, and what a good code can do and what a bad one can do. And the Stone Harbor Code is far and away the best code we see. But it's always had this little problem of the stairs not being allowed to encroach, which is pretty common in almost every town we work in. I can tell you after 30 years of practice that zoning codes do not come down from the mount in tablet form. They're flawed, they move, they change, they evolve. The Stone Harbor Code was written, I think I was still in college when it was written, and when it was written base flood and all of its height machinations didn't exist. The stairs didn't encroach because they didn't have to, because there were no stairs. Now, of course, with base flood elevation changes post-Sandy, base flood +1, base flood +2, base flood +3, the houses have gotten up in the air, and we need that stair encroachment. We need it from a technical standpoint, but I'd also say I've always wanted it from an aesthetic standpoint. I started to raise this issue before the zoning board years ago when we were doing very historic-based homes, and you could just search through the historic homes of this town. You know, all you have to do is go down to the local bookstore and buy your little historic book here, and every house in here has a stair that encroaches into the front yard. It's just a fundamental part of the town and the architecture. So I think there were some diagrams that were stuck in your mailbox, according to Mr. Krafchek, and I think you've seen them, where there were some oddities to the code that allowed a 5-by-5 landing, but wouldn't allow the stair itself. So I think it's pretty clear. I think that what we're asking for is de minimis. We're not going to be radically changing this code. We just want this little convenience. Interestingly, this was not a thing that would come before the board very often. It's such a small matter that we wouldn't go get a variance to fix this. You would just solve it somehow, cram the stair into the house or find some device. But I finally, a few years ago, I talked a client into coming to the zoning board to seek a variance for this thing only. And it is this house here, and I want to pass these around if I can. And some of you can get a color one.
Oh. First come, first serve.
Some of you, you get the color. The name. And here's a couple. Here's a couple. So you'll get the idea. So this house, which is on 104th Street and Corinthian, it was a small lot, and we wanted this porch, and the stair stuffed into the porch would have been ruinous, so I came to the zoning board to ask for this relief. It was the only relief. We weren't here for coverage or setbacks or height or anything. It was just this issue. And it was approved unanimously. And the zoning board, my recollection of it at the time, they all looked up and down at each other and didn't understand that stairs were not allowed to encroach. So it was, again, approved unanimously, and I think there was the provision that, oh, well, we should change this code. We should fix this. It's such a small thing. So they were going to refer it to the planning board to change and allow this encroachment to occur. And that was about 3 or 4 years ago, and here we are. And this, I think, was before Hurricane Sandy, so we could have, now the problem is just exacerbated. But I think if you could see that house, you can see we're talking about something that's pretty harmless and indeed a benefit. And that's the only reason I would give up my afternoon to come here to do something that I think is beneficial to this code and by extension this community. So I'm hoping when this ordinance comes back before you next month, cleaned up and easy to read and apply, that you'll give it your full consideration and vote in the affirmative. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said that several years ago you came before the council and asked for it to be considered, a change to be considered.
No, that's not true. What I did several years ago is I wrote a letter to the zoning board, and it never got to council. And, you know, this, of course, is not my full-time occupation to change zoning codes. So it's easy to not pursue a thing, and I never did.
I see.
And as I said, then it's you know, the zoning, getting as a zoning code changed is not an easy thing to do, especially over a small thing, ironically enough. If it's a big thing, you know, when I'll be before a zoning board over a change, and then you're there the next month over the same change, and the next month over the same change, what happens is the zoning code, I think under law, it has to be reviewed. But this is just a small thing that sort of flies under the radar and disappears into, so there you are. It didn't apply.
So you did appear before the zoning board, and you were,
And I was granted relief.
right,
Yes.
and that was only one time?
Correct.
So this hadn't occurred since then?
No, it occurs constantly, but you just
You didn't
find.
choose to go before the zoning?
No, it's just too, you know, it's an expensive, difficult, time-consuming thing to get to a zoning board, especially over such a small issue, if you can find a workaround, which, you know, you often can. They're not very pleasant workarounds, but you can find them.
Thank you.
What year is this house of what you handed out to us?
I,
So it was after Sandy or before Sandy?
I thought it was before Sandy, but, you know, I don't remember.
You don't remember?
They run
Okay.
together, you know,
Fair enough.
It's not terribly old.
Okay.
You said it's 104th and Corinthian?
It's 104th and Corinthian,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it might be a little newer than that.
yeah.
I live down there.
So is it, maybe it's in its second season, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interestingly, the owners never moved in. They sold it before they moved in. Yeah, go figure.
Okay.
So, but there you are.
One other question. How many homes have you designed in Stone Harbor, if you can guesstimate? over the
We've
years?
done about 450 on 7 Mile Island. And how many of that divides into Stone Harbor, I don't know. I know we've done many. I know we've done entire blocks. I know many of them are tourist attractions. And, you know, this town has been very good to me, as I often will joke to my clients. If you build a house in Stone Harbor, 350,000 people will see it on a weekend, and if you build a house in Gwinnett, Pennsylvania, it will be the mailman and the FedEx man and yourself.
Yeah.
So it's been a wonderful
This,
experience working here.
Mr. Asher, this is a bayfront.
It is Bayfront Home,
Okay.
yes.
I just want to ask your opinion on something. I mean, I'm in favor of this ordinance change for the most part. I do have some concern about making it island-wide, not island-wide, Stone Harbor-wide. If you're building on a lot, for example, that's, and this is your realm of expertise, not mine, but if your elevation on that grade is at 8 feet or 9 feet, where you only have to go up 3 feet to your bottom joist or the
Right.
top block to get to 11. Is there any need to have that ordinance apply in those areas where you can, if you wanted to, go out into the front setback?
I'm going to answer that in a couple different ways. I think, yes, it is, because what happens, what was happening in this, in the town, and you could see the homes all for yourself. If this was a larger presentation, I'd give you lots of photographs of the fact. When you pull that stair into the porch, even if it's a small porch, even if it's only 2 or 3 feet above grade, when you pull the stair into the porch, you're splitting that porch in two and basically not having a porch. So you've lost an asset. The other thing you find is you get the railing systems all pulled into the porch, and I get a situation that's not altogether safe. It's hard and expensive to build. But I really, the other thing I would say about it, again, I think it's an aesthetic benefit to have that stair tumble down to the sidewalk, and, you know, I just think it's a better way to do it. But something I said to the planning board when this was presented to them several months ago, singing the code's praises, one of the things that's so good about this code is it's just so easy to use. It's easy to read, it's easy to understand, it's easy to enforce. And once you start to kind of bifurcate and split little things and like, well, on this street, you can do this, and on that street, you can't. And here's the grade is here. You just do it across the board, and it's this simple kind of thing. And I'll, you know,
Well,
put, you know, so-
I get that. I mean,
Yeah.
I get that for like Ray Poudrier, it would be that's the simplest answer because it applies across Stone Harbor.
Right.
So there's never, you don't get into
Yeah.
these questions. But I don't know, like, I'm not talking about having to push it back into porches or anything else. I'm saying if your structure, because of your grade level, only has to be 4 feet off the ground, why do you need stairs that have to go all the way out? If you're only
Well-
that high as opposed to 10 feet, you know, if,
Well, I think what you do is this, because I mean, you're on the right track, because again, as I said, that, you know, most of the towns we work in, I think Cape May is the only one we don't, but of the 50 I have circulating around, where I'm allowed to have the stair encroach, there are limitations. For instance, it has to be a certain distance back from the property line. So if I have one of these monster stairs, you know, I still have to pull it into the porch. I mean, there is some common sense. Of course, it counts against the impervious coverage. You know, there are limitations on this thing. So it's not, you know, just a free-for-all out here. And I think that the proposed ordinance limits the width of them. Again, it's pretty innocuous thing we're talking about here. I certainly would like to think that.
Ray, to further answer your question, and this was brought up at planning board, and it's important to note, when your grade is that high, you will not need the full relief of that additional 5 feet, because you'll only be traversing.
that's what I'm saying. If you don't need it, why are we going to make this encroachment into the setback across the island? We only should give it where it's needed. So I don't know how you write that. Do you tie it to the elevation of the grade?
But I don't understand where you wouldn't need it.
I'm not sure what you're,
You know, if I get up to, on the beachfront where I'm in a,
If your structure only requires 4 steps,
yeah,
why do you have to go? I understand it when you have a long run of stairs and you have to encroach somewhere.
right.
But if you've only got 4 steps to get to your porch, then where do you need the encroachment on something that's not running all the way out there?
Well, maybe I would also suggest that I actually want the front porch. I mean, I think the front porch is sort of an encourageable, desirable thing, and the stairs leading up to that porch. Again, I'm seeing this all in a,
Well, so
through the-
then you're looking at it from taking the building structure all the way out to the line.
well, the porch
To the
typically
10-foot
would
line.
come to the line. You know, and I think, you know, there's that diagram, are they floating around that, you know, I have a couple of them here.
I think everyone has it in their
You
mailbox.
know, so, you know, and I think if you have that, if you're looking at this example B, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. That, you know, and I think I had done these, gosh, when was this done? 2014, where, you know, it was done purposely, where in example A, I could technically pull the house all the way up to the setback line and have this landing. So it's sort of ironic that I could do that, but I couldn't do the more gentle and more Stone Harbor-like porch design, all for the sake of a couple steps that are disappearing kind of down below out of my sight lines and probably buried in hydrangeas anyway.
I mean, these two exhibits spoke volumes to the planning board, I can convey that. And I mean, it's patently obvious from them that number 1 is permissible right now, that's what you can do, and number 2 is what you cannot do. It's,
Yeah.
And the actual square footage is more encroachment now.
yes, right, correct.
Correct. You know, but I think, you know, to me, it's all, you know, I've been doing this forever, and it sort of speaks to the idea of the zoning code being kind of, how could I put it, encouraging good development rather than just standing in the way of bad. I mean, that's the difference for me between a good code and a bad code. The bad ones are like, you know, my God, don't do anything, you know, and the good ones are, yeah, here's how we can work this. And, you know, today, the way codes are written is they're typically, you know, you find the good parts of your town and you reverse engineer around them. You know, if I were designing a house on Hughes Street in Cape May or what have you, or again, looking at this book, you know, I would be reverse engineering the good parts. And the good parts are porches and stairs and these things sort of encroaching. Indeed, and again, I feel like I talked to you forever, One of the towns we work in, the building coverage is, say 30% is the building coverage. And they have incentives to make it 35%, and one of those is I must have a stair that it connects to the front porch. So imagine, put yourself in the poor architect's shoes for a second. You've got one town where I can't have a stair encroaching at all, and I've got another town where they're giving me bonuses if I have the stair encroaching. Thank goodness the traffic lights are all the same color. Again, I think this is all just exceedingly positive, and to keep the thing simple and easy to use. Yes, the houses have gotten taller and higher, and I do see that as a problem. I wish it weren't so. I didn't have a single house damaged in Hurricane Sandy in any town. So the codes have gone on this haywire explosion of verticality, and I think it's a shame, but here it is, and I can't, I can help push and coax the local zoning code, but I don't have that power at a national building code, unfortunately. But here we are.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, folks.
Thank you.
This is going to be coming back to council during the work session in 3 weeks. And then we'll do a presentation during the work session from the planning board engineer. So where are we? Anyone else like to address mayor and council? Seeing no one, I'll close public comment. Resolution 2019 S33.
2019 S33 for adoption.
Second.
This is a reimbursement for zoning board application fees. The zoning officer had requested it and has approved the return of the fees.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Mr. Levens?
Resolution 2019 S34.
I'd like to offer Resolution 2019 S34 for adoption.
Second.
This is for our Legion to have their raffle license for 2019. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Mr. Levens?
Resolution 2019 S35.
Madam Mayor, I offer Resolution 2019-S-35 for adoption.
Second.
This resolution authorizes the Legion to conduct a single drawing on the date of November 11th, 2019.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Mr. Levens?
Resolution 2019 S36.
I'd like to offer Resolution 2019 S36 for adoption.
Second.
This is awarding a professional service contract for both the beach survey, which we do with Stockton, which is 2 times a year, and the lagoon survey, which is in the fall every year.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Mr. Levens?
Resolution 2019 S37.
Mayor and council, I'd like to offer Resolution 2019-S-37 for adoption.
Second.
This resolution is to reject the bids received for the wastewater pump station to date. Closest one was $200,000 in excess of the budget.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Mr. Levens?
We have no items of discussion on the agenda. May I have a motion approving the bill list?
I offer a motion approving the bill list and authorize the CFO to pay the bills when the funds are available and the vouchers are properly endorsed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? At this time, we're about to consider a resolution to go into private session. We would appreciate if you would all remain seated until the resolution has been acted upon. At the conclusion of the private session, we'll come back in the public session for the purpose of either taking action as a result of our discussion in private session or to simply adjourn. It is also possible that someone might bring up some other item of business in public session after we come back from private session. Items to be discussed in closed session are 3 contractual matters. Resolution 2019 S38.
Madam Mayor and Council, I offer Resolution 2019-S-38 for closed session.
Second?
Any discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Mr. Levens?
Yes.